We're joined by Irish journalist Hilary McGann, who runs the News by Hill account on Instagram, which is great for very timely updates on all of the news happening in that part of the world. Hilary, thanks for joining us this morning. We know that Donald Trump ran his election campaign on America first. He promised not to intervene in world conflicts. He certainly promised not to start them. How has this escalation in the Middle East been received there? What is the general response?
Good morning, Claire. Thank you so much for having me. In many ways, I'm here based in Boston, and it's hard to say at this point because it's so premature. I think a lot of this will depend on how long this ends up being drawn out and what impact this has. So I think you're going to see a lot of partisan views in many respects, like depending on where you fall across the political spectrum. But in many respects, from everything I've read based on Trump supporters and conservative Republicans, a lot of them are saying, let's just see how this plays out. Like they don't want to give a premature judgment on this. But I think it's important to state that, at the moment, President Trump's approval rating is somewhere between 37 and 39%. And just to give some context to that, that's the lowest it's been since January 6, 2021. And so it's going to be really interesting to see. A lot of people are keeping their eyes on the midterms coming up later this year. There's a real fear, I think, amongst a lot of Republicans about losing control of Congress. And so, yes, it might be premature to say, but I think there's a lot of nerves about this for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there will be a job done, no doubt, in the coming hours of convincing people that there was no option but to do this. And there will be a briefing coming later from Marco Rubio. And we would expect to hear that theme, I would imagine.
You will, absolutely. And we've already been hearing that over the weekend. So, later today, he's expected to meet with ranking members of the House and Senate. Tomorrow, there'll be kind of wider meetings with just members of Congress across the board. And the Speaker, Mike Johnson, has said that they can expect a vote on the War Powers Resolution on Thursday. But it's important just to take a step back for a second, Claire, and say that basically the justification that has been given by the US for these strikes that began on Saturday was based on really three things. President Trump, for a while now, has been arguing that Iran had relaunched its nuclear missile program, that they had enough nuclear material to create a bomb within days, and that they were also working on long-range missiles that had the ability to reach the US mainland. Now, in all of the reporting that I have seen, those points have been either proven false or remain unproven. And so that's what you're seeing a lot of the commentary about at the moment. There's a lot of people also raising questions around the legality of these strikes. And so I think that conversation will be really interesting. A lot of people are comparing this to the pretext to the war in Iraq in 2003. But you have to remember that actually that was a much longer drawn out process. And in the end, before the war began, that had congressional approval. So there are differences. I don't want to compare apples to oranges. But I think it will be really interesting to see the tone of the administration in the coming days and, what their plans are. Because at the moment, we don't really know how long they're planning for these strikes to continue.
Yeah, and the UN condemnation of this attack on Iran was swift. But it's just interesting to see now that both the UN and leaders in the EU must be content to watch on as bystanders as Israel and the US forge ahead on these matters, having no regard for the stance of these countries and states previously seen as staunch and firm allies.
Absolutely. And Claire, you mentioned Israel there, and I do think it's so important to highlight the fact that a lot of the media commentary and analysis that I've seen over the last few days make it very clear that the win that this is for Benjamin Netanyahu and how important it was that these strikes went ahead. Not only has he been calling for the Iranian regime to be overthrown for decades, he's also for 30 years said that Iran is days away from making a nuclear bomb. But also, when you look at the domestic situation in Israel at the moment, we're in a general election year there. And for him, this was really strategic because for a lot of Israelis, they are wary after 2 years of war with Hamas. A lot of IDF soldiers have been killed. And not to say, obviously, of course, so many in Gaza were killed, but I'm talking about from an Israeli political point of view. This would be seen as a huge win for Netanyahu ahead of those elections when he's already in a pretty weak political position.
Okay, Hilary, thank you very much for joining us from Boston. Hilary McGann there, who runs the News by Hill account on Instagram. Maha Dahan is Reuters Gulf Bureau Chief, and she joins me on the line now. Maha, thank you for being with us. I see in the last little while that Israel is confirming that they're carrying out additional strikes on Tehran. You might just update us on what's been happening over the last number of hours.
Well, what's been happening is the war has been widening. We've seen action in Lebanon for the first time overnight. We woke up here in the Gulf hopeful that the missile interceptions that we'd been hearing for the past couple of days would die down. But unfortunately, things have only kind of intensified. This morning, we had very loud bangs in both Dubai and Doha. And then we had the news that there were actually fighter jets that were in friendly fire downed in Kuwait. There was some incident at the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait. There's smoke rising from there. So these are all very unusual images, basically from, the Gulf countries that are normally quite stable, and that's not the kind of news that you would expect to be covering out of them.
I mean, as a side issue, this will disrupt the economic model in the Gulf profoundly, I would imagine.
That's what's on everyone's mind. I mean, Dubai especially has traditionally been a safe haven for people from the region and for the world. Actually, it's marketed itself as this kind of very stable, tax-free city that, welcomed entrepreneurs and investors. There has to be, I think, some kind of effect that's going to happen now after 3 days of, constant disruptions, massive disruptions with the closure of airspace, of course, but also to daily life. Basically, this is not the kind of life most expats here really sign up for.
But that doesn't mean that we're not mindful of the people in Iran who are facing this bombardment, the people in South Lebanon, in the northern border region in Israel as well, who have been told that they must leave 53 villages in Lebanon because the strikes are going in there from the Israeli side. I mean, this could very quickly, do you agree, become entrenched and something that does not, as Donald Trump say, last for 4 weeks, but goes well beyond that.
Unfortunately so, yes. I think this is probably the most significant war to probably have been started in the Middle East for the past 2 decades. I mean, we've seen nothing on this scale since 2003 with Iraq. And I do believe that this has the potential to be even more unsettling, seeing just the size of the disruption across countries that can happen, the amount of realignments that are now going to happen. And, just like it's no easy task. I mean, you can say regime change in Iran, but, the same problem that was encountered in 2003 in Iraq is going to be encountered again, because, what do we mean by regime change? Do you have a plan? What's going to happen now with the Khamenei gone? All these are questions that are up in the air at the moment, and I don't think many people have the answer to them.
Maha, thank you for joining us this morning. Maha Dahan, who's Reuters Gulf Bureau Chief. Ali Ansari is with us, Professor in Modern History with reference to Iran at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. Ali, thank you for taking the time to be with us, and I'm sure you heard Maha's assessment of it there. Do you agree that this is the most impactful conflict that we are likely to see when history judges it for the last 2 decades?
Well, it all depends on what happens in Iran. I mean, if you do see changes taking place in Iran, then probably yes, and it'll probably have a very wide-ranging impact. But of course, we're not dealing with the same type of conflict as we saw with Iraq. There are going to be no boots on the ground, and sooner or later, both sides are going to be running out of munitions. So I can't see this sort of going on for too long. But it's certainly, having a disruptive effect for the time being.
And what do you think the aim of Donald Trump and the Israelis is, and how will we know when they get there?
Well, I mean, it depends on which interview you read from Donald Trump. But at the moment, I suspect what they're really looking for, and certainly the Israelis, are for some measure of regime transition, if not regime change. I mean, some sort of change in the leadership in Iran. And it seems to me at the moment, if you look at what they're targeting, is they're trying to create the space for essentially the sort of national uprising that you saw in January to continue to the next stage. So, I mean, they're hitting a lot of regime infrastructure, police stations, the Basij militia and other things are being hit, as well as some nuclear sites. But that seems to be the primary target at the moment.
But when you see what's happening in the Gulf, as has just been described to us, I mean, that is a side effect that surely they must have imagined was going to happen as a result of striking Tehran over the weekend.
Yes, but it probably won't have quite the impact that the Iranians thought, because at the moment it looks like the Gulf Arabs are now siding with the Americans and are likely to probably join in the onslaught. I mean, it's a very, very bizarre strategy the Iranians have actually taken. I understand the element of disruption, but if you look at some of the accounts coming out of the UAE and even Saudi Arabia, the actual material damage has been, in economic terms, relatively slight at the moment. And the UAE and the Saudis and others are now basically, their diplomatic relations are ruptured, and they're now looking probably, by all accounts, and joining in the campaign, which is not really, I think, what the Iranians were hoping to come out of this. I mean, it was not, to my mind, incredibly well thought out at that end either.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, or how long do you think the Iranians can hold out here? What sort of firepower do they have to withstand what is coming at them?
Well, in terms of defensive capability, not much at all. I mean, at the moment, the Israelis and the Americans have got air supremacy over Iran and are basically bombing things as they see fit. I think in terms of retaliatory power, they obviously have extensive number of drones. They have a limited supply of missiles. Obviously, they're firing these off at some pace, it has to be said. And I don't know what their inventory was, but it's if they're going at about 300 a day, I can't see them lasting for more than 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks at this rate. So, I mean, there is a sort of a rather strange competition going on here between what the Israelis and the Americans have, plus the other allies in terms of the assets and what the Iranians have. And at the moment, the disparity, I think, is very much against Iran.
I was looking at a piece in the New York Times, talking about the EU former allies in all of this, as would have been the case, France, Germany and Britain, of course, watching as this unfolds. It's very hard to get your head around how the world works and how quickly it has changed.
Yes, but it looks like now they're being drawn in anyway. So, I mean, this is the point. I mean, the Germans have always been a little bit more, involved. I think the British and the French are now, if you look at some of the commentary, they said that they, in the interest of defending their allies, they will be attacking the missile sites in Iran. So it's a strange way of phrasing it, but it looks like, finally they're also about to join in the whole melee.
Well, do you think that's a calculation by the US and Israel, that these guys will have no choice but to join us if we start it?
Well, I mean, I would have thought, for instance, from an Iranian strategic perspective, had they focused their ire on the Israelis, it would have certainly limited the ability of the regional partners, and certainly the British and the Americans, maybe British and the French, I should say, to participate. But having gone out of their way to attack almost every Arab state in the region, it leaves, it's left people with very little choice. I don't think it was necessarily part of the strategic calculation on the part of the Israelis and the Americans, but I suspect for them now, they're probably welcoming the fact that the Iranians have made such a, by all accounts, a strategic blunder. But it's basically forced the hand of all the others now to come in.